I think there's some beers in the back, so you can take it. And last session of the day. We know each other already for a while. We've met in 2015 when LoRaWAN was created, and we met, I think, somewhere in Vancouver, 2018.
Yes.
And I think we already have a lot of conversations, and now we're taking that here to the stage. And we were talking about what to talk about, and we're thinking about the ghost of the past, the present, and the future, and talk a bit unfiltered about the ecosystem. And it was, I think Jaap has 30 years experience in IoT?
At least.
At least. 20, 8, 10? That's with 10. Let's talk about the State of the Union, and maybe you could shortly introduce yourself, and then we'll take it off from there.
Sure. Well, thank you, Winke. As you said, Jaap Groot. I'm actually Dutch, but I've left the Netherlands quite a while ago. Went through a Sigfox experience, and then through a couple of years with Alistair in a Semtech experience and LoRa, built up the LoRa Alliance. And for the last 3 years, I've dived into the cellars of IoT, as I call it, with little antennas. So it's really not that sexy, but very necessary. And I'm very glad to be able to sit here and talk about, the past 30 years, basically. Because if we go back, I think even SMS could be seen as IoT right now, right? So that's about me.
So Alistair, those of you who didn't see me speak this morning, I've spent a long time in IoT, and I've probably made all the mistakes that you can make, I think. There's probably more that I'll still make in the future. But I spent 4 years or so working on LoRa, a few years before that building Hitachi's Lamada industrial IoT platform. A good few years before that with Microsoft, helping to start what became Azure IoT, developer tools for IoT, et cetera, and before that, running a solutions business, building predictive maintenance solutions for railways and that sort of thing. And prior to that, cellular IoT, or it was called M2M at the time, telematics, etc. That's me. Very happy to be here. I think we're going to recreate the conversation that we normally have in a bar. It's generally the intent.
That's the intent.
It's quite frequent. It normally happens around TTN. So it's nice to be able to do it on stage.
Great. So when you have this amount of experience, kind of there's all these things that you experience. You internalize them, and then you act out of your stomach, right? So with this amount of experience, you're less rational. So you must experience this kind of when you see something on LinkedIn or not again. So what's kind of tell me what you see right now when you say, oh, we've done that so many. Why are we gonna go this path again? What do you have something here for us?
I've got to say, every time I see a new wireless technology, and it's regular, and it's not to say that from a technical perspective, is technology A better than technology B, and it doesn't really matter, is the problem. And every time I see the new announcement, I imagine the many millions of dollars that are going to be spent building it out, and the many to build the silicon and build the ecosystem, etc. And I always think, God, what would be different if we actually took that money and spent it on building solutions with what we've already got? Wouldn't that be a different thing to do? But and I'm not talking particularly about my IoT, but it's a recent example. And again, great technically, but it's not really the strength of the technology that matters. As long as the technology, specifically the connectivity technology, is good enough, it's good enough. It's more important that it has lots of friends, and it's more important that it's easy to use.
I would agree with that, and specifically, I think people forget about looking at a problem that exists. Forget about the technology behind it. We can solve it. There's enough technology in the world, so let's see if there is a problem that we can solve. And I recall, because you were referencing my gray hairs enough, so many nights ago, there was a company called Video Dayton, which built navigation systems. And they were so complex that even an average student in a university had difficulties of operating it. And one guy really, a Dutch guy, but it doesn't matter, thought, this is too complex. Let's make it simple. And he invented TomTom. And all of a sudden, the whole world could turn on a device, push a button, and navigate. And I remember the first time I gave it to my dad, which was 68 by that time, he refused to use it because it was too complex. But a year later, he couldn't live without it. So I think we have to look at the problem, try to make things simple, and work together to solve an actual situation in the market. And I'll have an example of that later on also. Nobody cares about my IoT, Sigfox, LoRaWAN, or whatever other technology might exist. It's not a battle of technologies. It's a battle of finding the right use case.
Yeah. So usability, simplicity, consolidation, almost. So what's the correct framing for? Because there's we had an immense inflow of capital over the last few years. There was unlimited cash for any PowerPoint that you could throw at investors. That has just flipped over the last 18 months. So how do you characterize, and if you look at all the cycles that you guys have seen, the current situation? Is it, can we call it convergence? Can we call it consolidation? Is it just pure Darwinism and things are dying off? So how do you reflect on this situation, and how does that reflect on things you've seen in the past?
I think James Blackman, I don't know if he's still here, tried to write this down in a non-controversial way also. But yes, it's down to Darwinism. Things are dying. If you're looking for money right now, I don't know who of you are, but then you would probably tell me it's extremely difficult. Because every VC will tell you, no, we keep our money to keep our current investments live. If you have bringing something new, you have no chance. So all these people that talk about, convergence and need another 100 million, not going to happen. It's just too tough right now. So I feel much more like what Winke has been doing with Johan and the way we have built, let's say, our company. I think, Alistair, from a public, because you were in a public company, it's a bit of a different story, but in a private company, please, guys, look for the money in the use cases where you bring value to the customer that is willing to pay the money that you want to do. And then don't develop the next pallet tracker, because that's going to not be possible for $5 today. Maybe in the future, but not today. So I've learned that you got to spend your money wisely on those customers that basically are willing to pay for the knowledge that you can bring to solve their problems. And if you don't do that and use your investors basically to fund that, you're going to die.
Yeah, I mean, I think the herd that used to be attracted every time you said IoT, I mean, you could build a pitch deck for a VC and you sprinkle a bit of IoT on top and it's all good. That herd is now running after AI, because all you have to do is say AI, sprinkle a bit of AI on it, and the money will flow. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, too much cash is almost as big an enemy of innovation as the whiteboard is. Because I think if you think about how companies built, and I can speak personally, how did we come up with the concept and how did we flesh it out and decide what we were going to do? Predominantly that was done on a whiteboard when it should have been done with the customer. Because we thought all sorts of things were very important, and it turned out that only a few of them were. And I think with this reduction in the amount of cash, there is a Darwinistic element to this. There are some companies that would never have survived, but I think those that are surviving because they are, by necessity, listening to their customers more and actually building solutions for their customers' problem, rather than building the great thing that they drew on the whiteboard that would be fantastic and thrilling and exhilarating to build.
I want to link it back, what you just said, Alistair, to this TomTom example. When in 1999, I think it was, Harold Gordijn, who was the CEO of TomTom, called me up and said, I raised 50 million, and now I want to ask you how to spend it. He came from Psion, which was little handheld computers, and then he founded TomTom. And I said, well, why do you ask? 50 million, you can conquer the world. He said, well, my wife thinks I should spend 25 million on marketing, and then I'm stuck with 25 million for technology. And I think should spend 50 million on technology. Luckily enough, in this case, the wife won, because that saved his ass. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the marketing of TomTom was so good and the user experience and the focus on
The first 25 million they used to build 1 million devices. So that tells you the cost price of the device. And then I think it was about 9 months later, he called back up and said, I need to build 2 million more devices because there's enough demand. Yeah. And this goes back to what I was trying to get across. Go to your customer, ask their problem, ask about what you can save or what value you can bring, and then you will see in a pallet tracker, you cannot make $10 or $20 out of a pallet tracker. There's no value there. But if you're tracking something else which has more value, I was just talking about bags for food, which have $1,000 of food in there, and you must measure if there's oxidation, because otherwise the nuts or whatever in the bag will deteriorate and cannot be used as food. All of a sudden you have $1,000 food savings.
Yeah. So I think my perspective on this on the last few years was that there's been a bit of an echo chamber of analysts and the PowerPoint and the investor, and this whole customers just got a bit of like that was the path of the most resistance. And I think the tough times that we have right now is that also this hardens and this educates. And I think I've also seen we've had this discussion about younger companies and really young in terms of like 25-year-old founders that have a lot of cash. That's actually very, very problematic. But the current times is pretty beautiful. And so where have you seen in these cycles these downturns and kind of like what kind of like if you move from M to M and moving forward, can you tell me a bit more about these waves and can we reflect on now, kind of really going rock bottom, and what's next? Kind of like, is there optimism or kind of?
Well, I mean, talking in terms of waves, we've seen, as you mentioned, a wave of money coming into the IoT space, which a surplus of cash, like I said, is a bad thing. The source of that cash, at the risk of offending anyone in the audience who's in the VC space, the source of that cash came from VCs, and their primary focus was on an exit. And so they pushed to build differentiation into the product so that they could. Those VCs also were somewhat addicted to the software growth curve that they had seen happen time and time before, that you could invest and create a unicorn and exit for gazillion dollars and leave. And they applied that same model to IoT and pushed hard for differentiation, pushed hard. I think that was a very a fairly pernicious and damaging force for a lot of things. There isn't really a parallel. When you look at the VC space, you look at funding, because it was software before primarily. I mean, that's where the VC model in many respects grew, or at least the West Coast VC model in the US. And what we're seeing now, I think, is just the natural cycle of a business that deals with the massive complexity that IoT deals with. You can write a software package once and ship it 1 billion times, and there's no OpEx involved. You cannot do the same with solutions that involve hardware. You cannot do the same with solutions that actually require some level of integration into the existing world. So I think what we're seeing now is quite different from what we've seen before. The fact that the money's backed off a little bit, I think, is a good thing. I see more private equity in the space, because the private equity perspective is more operational in nature and longer term by design. 7 to 10 years, understand a space, invest. So I think that change more than wave is going to carry us forward. As for what's next, as I said this morning, the problems that we're talking about are problems that customers were talking about, in my experience, 30 years ago. Still the same problem. Right. And those problems either generate significant cost for the customer, they generate significant environmental damage for the customer, or they represent foregone or missed revenue. And as long as that continues to be the case, what we all talk about in this hall has direct relevance. I just don't think we've done a good enough job yet in delivering simple answers to those problems, which are generally quite simple in nature. Where is it? Is it on fire? Did someone steal it? Is it broken? Those problems will exist forever. And so IoT, we may change the name. I think you could debate whether IoT, the moniker, did us harm or good. I personally think it did us harm. This will continue.
Yeah, I think, Winke, you showed the answer this morning because your own evolution in TTN has been like a stairs, right? Step by step by step, building up the bricks. And I think that's how IoT today needs to be built, because there's nobody who has a magic wand. And investors want to see that, right? Where's your hockey stick? I'm always telling them there is no hockey stick in IoT. Just be patient. Yeah, but my fund is running out. Well, yeah, too bad for you, but I'm still building on little blocks. Now, frankly, there are two things that I've always seen fly to drive volume, if you will. It's always fun and fear. People will pay for fun. And that was, I remember, for 20 years ago, you were paying for a ringtone or so. That was fun, but you paid $1 for it, right?
The crazy frog.
Exactly, and logos, and then fear. And fear is all about, you want to protect something, or you are anxious that something is going to be damaged or whatever. And if you allow me, the use case that I would like to tell you about is people dying on the road. I never envisioned this, but there is people dying on the road because their car breaks down. And I can show you today a device which is just a flashlight, as simple. These flashlights have always been there. Don't look too much into it. But in Spain, they are deploying 30 million of these in the next 2 years. Now, was this me or us looking at the IoT market and thinking about, how do we crack this nut? No, this is just fear. 200 people in Spain or 2,000 in Europe die because they put this stupid triangle on the highway and they get hit. So this is just a solution to a problem that has always existed. And I think we should be much more doing that rather than trying to find the next holy grail.
So just to bridge it to IoT then, so this is one is connected, or?
Who thinks this is an IoT device? Right?
Because we're at an IoT conference.
Yeah.
And I asked.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a connected device that could have existed on SMS 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and today we call it IoT. So has that done us any good? No, because people go off and try to invent the next whatever thing. And that's not what we're here for. We're here for, let's say, optimizing existing processes or securing existing ROIs. And again, if you do something in fun, good luck, that's good, or in fear. Otherwise, you're going to be pushing your customer to determine where your value comes from, and that's sometimes tough.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks, very interesting insight. So what we always have kind of strategically had discussion about in our companies, kind of how ready-made, we're a horizontal company, right? And you also sell a component. How kind of ready-made and packaged do we do it? Like, are we gonna go into all these verticals? And Johan and I shared this morning is that we can be smart at every vertical. So in that spectrum, we also don't want to be kind of like very rough components that you can do. So can you share a bit about kind of like looking into the futures? What's the kind of focus, and let's call it, what's the level of granularity you want to look at?
I mean, I think you need to think very carefully about route to market. Because when you look at who's bought IoT solutions over the years, until quite recently, it was companies who were prepared to spend several $1 million on building a custom solution. And that's a very small audience by definition. It's the top tier of the largest enterprises out there. The bigger market opportunity is in the mid-market. It's the mums and pups stores, if you like. And for those customers, we're not the right people to sell them solutions. They want to buy solutions from the company that sells them paper towels for the bathroom. They want to buy solutions from the company that sells them the refrigerator that they use in the store. And so I think components are fixing specific problems and doing it well. Doing that in such a way that those components can be combined is all good. But ultimately, the face to the customer in many instances is not going to be us. And I think a lot of the time, again, I don't want to just beat up on VCs, but a lot of the time, the talk is of customer visibility and customer intimacy. Customers want to be intimate with their suppliers. They chose those suppliers quite carefully. We're mostly not amongst them. We can either try and recreate those relationships or go make friends with the people that already have them. And I think again, I see folks kind of realizing that. Now, the challenge is that a lot of the companies that have relationships with them have spent the last few years trying to build their own IoT platform and their own this and that and the other. And I think that's also starting to wind down a little bit as they recognize where the expertise is. But building those relationships, and for the larger enterprise customers, it's systems integrators and solution providers are very key as well. And the good news about that is that that's a much more scalable business model than having to hire your own sales force and go out and convince a customer after customer to buy from you. You only have to convince one partner, and they can go reach 1,000 customers for you.
But I think you said it yourself this morning, Wink. For me, it's all about focus. Be very good at what you do, because if you are not as good, then somebody else will simply be better. And that means you can't do everything. At least in my company, I can't do everything. And once you know what that is, where you focus, hit that bowling pin. There are books about that. But second, simplicity. Make it simple. And if you want, one thing I learned and what helped me, even recently, is walk through your own company or team or whatever and try to explain with your phone in 90 seconds what you're doing, what you're solving, and why it's important. And if you can do that in 90 seconds and show it to your wife or your business partner, then you're onto something. Because now you are for sure simplified, because otherwise nobody gets it, and you are focused. And I think we still are not there. That's why we go in this stairs, step by step.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think one of the good things that you'd see, the device wall of fame is kind of, if we would make a picture every year, you would see these solutions are more focused. They are less 3D printed. They are made by industrial companies that are more than 100-year-old. So it is exactly what you're saying, all these steps. And I wanted to go back to your point on these small steps, is that if you, for instance, take into account that in that graph we showed with growth, it's after installation, when the data is sent. And especially if you look at, then in the Western world, concurrency of installation is impossible. You can't just have a field services crew of 300 people to spell water meters. It's just not possible. So it is inherently slow, but it also is, and hopefully added by these solar panels, it will become an infrastructure investment at some point, but we need to get it. So I want to both give you this opportunity to say a last thing, what you want to give the audience, and then we can wrap up. And what's the takeaway?
Okay, so actually, thanks for the opportunity in the first place. I think we've been pretty decent.
Yeah, it's very nice.
So, right?
Considerate.
We're being recorded, though.
We should have.
We've not blamed anybody.
But we're going to the bar later, and then people can kind of ask the real story.
Okay, that's good. And you told us this morning it was not recorded and broadcasted, but then the audience said, no, we want to hear this, so it is going global.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful. But no, the time of megalomaniacs and VCs that believe in that is over, in my opinion. Just do what you're good at, and let's see that we can work together and give each other the day of light in the eyes in terms of making a little bit of money. And if that doesn't fly, then just step out of it. If you can't make money in IoT, then stop it, because there's no sense in continuing to believe in something that doesn't exist. And the lessons that we can bring, we will do over a glass of beer, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. I think I showed one, but there's plenty on the wall of fame. I don't know, you didn't count how many devices were actually live on that, because they're not all on your network, I assume. There's much more. Yeah. So I think it is easy to say there's millions of devices out there that are on that wall of fame. So guys, good luck, and tap me on the shoulder if you want a further discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd say likewise. Thank you for having us. I talk a lot about the ecosystem, and I talk a lot about friends within an ecosystem. And one of the reasons I talk about that is that I have had the privilege of observing this event grow from a small little group of folks to an event that year on year changes. It becomes more as you said, less 3D printed, real solutions, real customers walking around. You know, my old measure used to be how many ties do you see? You know, how many suits and ties? And it used to be there were none, and now there's quite a lot. I don't know quite what that means. And you know, it's thrilling to see how it's grown. So much so that just to get you again, I've missed my wedding anniversary once more. Okay. Because you arranged it on my wedding anniversary, which is today, much to my wife's annoyance.
Sorry for that.
6 of them. I mean, good God, man. But no, it's really wonderful to be here, and it's really wonderful to see the vibrancy in this ecosystem and folks working together. That's what we need to do, and that's what will drive success.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate our relationship, and thank you very much that you want to share this on stage. And let's have a beer. Thank you.